It's a big embassy. We have 24 diplomats, including me. And then we have 35 local staff, and some of them are Russian.
There are more than 150 diplomatic missions and embassies of foreign states in Moscow. Diplomats and their families temporarily become Muscovites. How do they feel working and living here? Today's episode is quite unusual. Our crew had the unique opportunity to spend a day together with the ambassador of the Republic of Indonesia to Russia. Over the next 26 minutes, we will tell you everything about what makes relations between Moscow and Jakarta special, share with you some secrets of brewing Indonesian coffee, and learn about the most popular kind of sport among the citizens of this big island country. Hi, I'm Mike Gibson. It's the programme Capital Ideas Life. Moscow is growing its diplomatic ties with many countries around the world. In Moscow, there are already many diplomats living and working, promoting the interests of their home countries. Today, we're going to meet and spend time with one of them. Moscow, 5:30 a.m. The city is still sleeping, and our programme's hero is already tuning himself into a new day. Every morning, the Indonesian ambassador to Moscow starts his day with meditation. 20 minutes of focusing on breathing and self-awareness. Our programme's hero believes that this breathing practice is the best way to calm the mind, drive away all worries, and set your mind in the right direction. Muhammad Wahid Supriyadi's day has begun. Muhammad Wahid Supriyadi, the Indonesian diplomat. Since March 2016, he has been Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary of the Republic of Indonesia to the Russian Federation and the Republic of Belarus. He was born in a small village on the island of Java. He graduated from the Faculty of Foreign Language at Gajah Mada University. He also studied at the School of Diplomacy. He is married with 3 children.
The ambassador is a truly generous man. We are lucky to have him working in Russia at the Embassy of Indonesia. He managed to create a family atmosphere. As a senior diplomat, he is always happy to share his experience with us, and he is doing his best to make sure that we achieve better results and improve our performance even more. He's a very interesting ambassador, an unusual ambassador, an ambassador who shuns any kind of formalities. He has been holding what is generally known as the Indonesian Festival in early August for 4 years in a row now, and it's fantastic because it gives many Muscovites the opportunity to become familiar with the culture of Indonesia as well as its art. He's a very open man. He represents his country the right way, the kind of way that the people and the culture ought to be perceived. He is calm. He is kind. He is good-natured. He doesn't like conflict. He is certainly mild with his employees.
Having finished his meditation and put on his business suit, Mr. Ambassador heads over to the office in his residence. A folder with documents to be signed is already waiting for him there. Then some more time must be dedicated to the morning news. Only then can the diplomat allow himself to have his breakfast.
I usually have very light breakfast, as I did in the past from my childhood. It's healthy food, and also I'm on diet. So this is actually very traditional Indonesian menu. Every day Indonesian always have rice, and then vegetables, dried fish. But this one is a new one. This is made of cassava, which is very healthy. So this is what we had almost every day in Indonesia. And I come from the very big family. In the past, parents tend to have, many children. I come from the big family. I have 7 brothers and sisters.
Wahid Supriyadi grew up in a big family. He's used to having many people at the table at all times. However, today he's having his breakfast alone, and this is the exception rather than the rule. All of his relatives have left for their native Indonesia for several days.
I come from the big family. I have 7 brothers and sisters, so together we are 8, and I'm the eldest, so I have to work very hard But nowadays, many Indonesian youngsters, they tend only have 2, maximum 3 children. This is the past, of course. Now, my father was a school teacher. I come from a remote village, actually, in Indonesia, in the island of Java. And I had to drive by cycle 4 kilometers, back and forth during my junior high school. And then I went to a district city called Purworejo, 20 kilometers from my village, and I have to stay at a boarding house in Purworejo. And then after that, I continue my study at English literature at Faculty of Literature and Culture from Gajah Mada University. Actually, in the beginning, I didn't have any imagination to become a diplomat, not to mention ambassador. But since I was a childhood, I love listening foreign languages, and the first I listened to was English.
His interest in foreign languages paved the way to a diplomatic career. Today, the ambassador is fluent not only in English, but also in German. Russian is still giving him a hard time, though. Even so, he loves and understands Moscow. Wahid Supriyadi has risen up all the way from being an ordinary teacher to becoming the highest-ranking diplomat. He worked both as a lecturer and as a consultant. Later, he was ambassador to Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates. Now he's ambassador of Indonesia to Russia. Mr. Supriyadi says it's a challenging job because his actions and decisions impact the relations between the two countries. Official diplomatic relations between Russia and Indonesia began in 1950. Today, almost 70 years later, Moscow and Jakarta see great potential for making their mutual relations even deeper. Next year, on the occasion of the 70th anniversary of diplomatic relations, Russian President Vladimir Putin plans to make an official visit to this island state. Active preparations for this event are already in full swing. Almost every day, the ambassador holds major meetings attended by his first deputy, ministers, councillors, heads of the embassy's departments, diplomats, and even technical employees. Everyone is discussing the forthcoming events connected with the anniversary. They still have a long way to go.
Of course, my job is how to make relations between Indonesia and Russia closer. And I noticed that Russians are very much appreciative on any kind of arts, and that's why we designed the first event in Russia when I became ambassador, was establishing the Festival Indonesia, or Indonesian Festival, which was held first at Hermitage Garden and fought twice. And then finally we moved to Krasna Presnya.
Take Krasna Presnya Park, which has become the traditional venue of the Indonesian festival in Moscow. This year, it took place in early August. Bright national costumes, coffee harvested from the mountaintops of the island of Java, a fashion show, and handmade snakeskin bags. For 3 entire days, the Moscow Park was transformed into a corner of this faraway Asian country. The 4th festival was recognized as the largest of its kind yet. It brought together over 1,200 people, including ministers, business people, and artists from Indonesia. Each year, the festival is gaining popularity among the representatives of the Indonesian business community. To put this into perspective, only 60 people came to the first festival. This year, there were already 200 pavilions open in Krasna Presnya Park, where the Indonesians could showcase their products.
Can you imagine? Indonesia is a country of 17,000 islands, and every island has its very own traditions, as well as its own art. When we first started to prepare for the festival, we completely immersed ourselves in that culture. It's incredibly interesting. There are so many kinds of batik, and each one of them has its own theme and its own patterns. This year, we are representing Western, Central, and Eastern Java, Aceh Province, and Sumatra. People from these regions brought local products with them. People from some areas prefer woodwork, Others offer textile products, and yet others create amazing jewelry. We're constantly trying to expand the festival's program. The number of artists who come from Indonesia every year also keeps going up. They bring very interesting musical shows, song and dance performances, and jaw-droppingly beautiful costumes. This year, the central stage of the festival hosted performances by nearly 300 Indonesian artists.
Muscovites have grown fond of this festival and of the country, Indonesia, as well. For its warm climate, something Moscow cannot always brag about, and for the seas and oceans surrounding this country, and also for Indonesian coffee.
As usually, coffee plant tree grew up in 1,000 sea level up, but our coffee very special, 10,000 dpl or sea level. Most people say that I am crazy man because I plant the coffee tree near from the beach, just 1 kilometer from beach. I want to be open the coffee shop in Moscow because here is very cool.
Last year, Indonesia became the 11th biggest exporter of coffee to Russia. Total export supplies reached 3,628 tons, and the value of supplies exceeded $9 million. To date, the leaders in the Russian coffee market are Vietnam, Brazil, Italy, India, and Germany. But it's obvious that trade turnover and promotion of Indonesian coffee in Russia, particularly specialty coffee, will only continue to grow. The Moscow Coffee Festival marked the beginning of cooperation among several coffee companies in Russia and Indonesia. There's another business event in the ambassador's work schedule. Despite the informal atmosphere with traditional dances and delicious Indonesian food in one of Moscow's restaurants, this is still a business meeting. Our crew was invited to the exclusive event on the occasion of signing the Memorandum of Understanding by Tanamera Coffee, an Indonesian company, and Kokar Coffee, a Russian company.
We see a massive potential in Russia because together with our team at Kokar and, of course, with all of our clients, we are working hard to raise the level of coffee in Russia, to make shipments trackable, to ensure high-quality products, and to supply the ever-growing amount of top-quality drinks. We work together with around 300 small-sized coffee roasters, small and medium and even large-sized roasters in Russia. It's Indonesian coffee that all of them are asking us to supply. Indonesian coffee is ideal for an espresso blend that will go well with milk. This is the reason why we see such serious potential in regular monthly container shipments of Indonesian specialty coffee to Russia.
And the first such container with premium class Indonesian origin coffee is already on its way to Russia.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, this is an historic moment. The Memorandum of Understanding is now being signed by Tanamera Coffee, an Indonesian company, and Kokar Coffee, a Russian company.
Both parties were preparing for this memorandum signing throughout the year. They were becoming familiar with the coffee growing regions and learning the roasting processes. They were studying the finest types of coffee and selecting the most premium beans to be exported to Russia. Mr. Ambassador himself is a great admirer of coffee, and he wants to make sure that Muscovites learn as much as possible about this invigorating drink.
We've learned that Russians consume large amounts of coffee. It's much more compared to how much their neighbors in European countries are drinking. Furthermore, Russia doesn't have the right climate conditions for growing coffee. This is why I think it's a win-win situation for all of us. In fact, professional baristas and coffee shop owners have known about the quality of Indonesian coffee for quite some time now. But unfortunately, there was a break in our activity. Now, we are trying to make up for lost time so we can regain the positions that we once held. This is only the first stage of our partnership. We hope that in the future, not just 1, but 4 or 5 containers with coffee will be heading to Moscow every month.
Following the completion of the official part of the event, the most fragrant and delightful activities were awaiting the representatives of the coffee industry and connoisseurs of this drink. It was coffee cupping, also known as professional coffee tasting, during which the drink's taste and flavor properties are identified.
So now we welcome you to the table to try the coffee and to savor its delicious aroma. So, how do we make this coffee? First, we pour water heated up to 93 degrees Celsius into the cup. Then we wait for 3 to 4 minutes. We then skim off the foam. We inhale the aroma of the coffee. Then we take a spoon. We breathe in the aroma once again. And then we don't actually drink the coffee, but rather sip it. All of this is done to better savor its taste, its high points, and its flaws. What makes Indonesian coffee special are its flavors, which are a characteristic of the soil in which the coffee grows. Indonesian coffee has a full body and a rich taste. It's known for its low-toned, gentle aromatic acidity, its high density, and its numerous flavors. These are its characteristic features. But Indonesian coffee can be either a commercial or a very high-class product. Coffee from the island of Java is an ideal choice for making Turkish coffee. It's only during the past several years that we have had a fairly good choice of coffee products. Specialty coffee from different plantations and various farmers. This allows us to say with a certain degree of confidence that we have entered a stage of market development when Indonesia is already well associated with good coffee. I generally perceive tastes through associations. In my mind, Indonesia is, for some reason, associated with a wide variety of colors. And there are many nuances, but the main one is diversity of colors.
Espresso, cappuccino, americano, ristretto and latte. For every Indonesian, it's more than a drink, it's a lifestyle. And Moscow's residents are actively adopting it. In many respects, this is the work of the ambassador of the Republic of Indonesia. I'm located in the embassy of the Republic of Indonesia. It's my first time here, and just like you, I'm about to discover this new place. So now we're about to have a little excursion around the embassy. We're going to see what we have here and hope to hear all the interesting things you can tell us about the embassy.
Yeah, so this is basically a heritage, and it was more than 100 years old.
Okay.
I was told that this used to be a hospital.
Interesting.
Yeah, and then we rented this for premise for the embassy in 1954. And more space, but this is our launch.
And with the national flags.
Yeah, and sometimes we have some meetings here with our communities, with students.
Right.
Yeah, and this is the meeting room. Pictures of the previous ambassadors. There were 18 ambassadors altogether, so I'm the 19th actually.
Right.
Yeah. And the first ambassador in 1954, Subandrio. It's all very important person, you know, some of them.
The first floor of the embassy is designed to receive guests and delegations. Also, there's a small cafeteria here, and we're going up to the second floor. Of course. So how many staff do you have in this embassy?
Well, this is a big embassy. We have 24 diplomats, including me. And then we have 35 local staff, and some of them are Russian, but the good thing about the Russian staff, all of them speak Indonesian well, Bahasa Indonesia very well. So some of them becoming my interpreter as well.
Right.
And some of them even can.
The second floor of the embassy is for the employees and Mr. Ambassador's office. This part of the building is usually hidden away, but for our crew an exception was made. Pay attention to the geographic map of the Russian Federation. On the map, all the cities that Mr. Ambassador has visited are marked. In less than 3 years, he has already been to 24 regions across Russia.
I found something also different. That I have different. This is I would like to prove that Russian also very multicultural, and it's true. I went from the the northern part Archangels to southern parts to Dagestan, which is a bit different in their culture. Dagestan mostly, I think 95% Muslim. And then I went also to the far eastern Vladivostok.
In almost every office, in the halls and meeting rooms of the embassy, there are many paintings and batik works featuring national Indonesian motifs. They remind Wahid Supriyadi of his homeland. Mr. Ambassador wants ordinary Muscovites to come to know Indonesian culture. Upon his initiative, the embassy began offering Indonesian language courses. It holds a regular masterclass and lessons. It turned out that Indonesian folk dances are particularly popular among Muscovites. Virtually no event organised by the embassy can do without folk dances. For example, take Indonesia's Independence Day, which was also celebrated in Moscow. By tradition, the holiday began with a flag-raising ceremony and a parade. The formal part was followed by the most exciting performances. There was a large concert with the ambassador's participation. This time, he didn't take on the usual role of a speaker, but rather that of a real musician. He performed several songs for the guests. Despite his busy schedule, the ambassador of Indonesia always tries to find free time to become better acquainted with Moscow. He says he likes the city very much, and he is doing his best to tell the world and his country about Moscow. To be honest, we were surprised to learn that it's not a problem for the ambassador to openly and calmly walk along the streets of the Russian capital, come rain or shine.
That's very interesting, you know. Majority of Indonesians, when they heard about Russia, they look very scared, because when they know Russia, like Soviet Union, was in the Hollywood movie, you know, where Russian is portrayed like, you know, people who did not smile, who never smiled, and then there's so many spies everywhere, you know, like in the movie. But when they come to Moscow, they come to Russia, they completely change their minds. It's so different. It's unlike when they saw in the movie. You know, people are like us, you know, people are friendly, and surprisingly, it's peaceful, you know. We can see lady walking 12 midnight, you know, free, and it's just common view in Moscow. So that's why once they go.
The ambassador has nothing against playing the role of a tourist from time to time. Old Arbat is one of his favorite places in Moscow. We learned that here he often buys Russian matroshkas, ushankas.
Yeah, alhamdulillah. Yeah. Oh, this one better.
Now it's okay, yes?
This one better. Yeah, yeah.
And books.
History of Russia is very interesting, starting from the 9th century, Rurik the Rus, to the fall of Soviet Union. It's very interesting, and here at Arbat Street you can find so many books about Russia, about the history, and I suggest you to come and have a look, especially those who understand Russian.
The diplomats in Moscow don't just work, but take an active part in the life of Moscow. The ambassador of Indonesia, for example, loves to play sport. And since he comes from Indonesia, of course, he plays badminton. The day is nearing its end, but the ambassador is still brimming with passion and energy and doesn't seem to slow down. Several times a week, he goes over to the sports club to play his favorite game, badminton.
He's a serious opponent. He plays very well. Playing against him is hard work, so you really have to stay on your toes, and this makes the game more interesting.
Indonesia is the birthplace of the first Olympic badminton champions. They say that this game can open any door for you in Indonesia. Badminton is played there by everyone, everywhere. It was Mr. Ambassador himself who gave us a lesson in Indonesia's favourite sport. Thank you so much.
My
that
pleasure.
was a lot of fun. Very interesting.
Yeah, you've done it well. You just need a lot of more practice.
Okay.
Yeah, you
great.
can start. You can start.
Thank you very much. That's encouraging.
Good.
So that was my first attempt at badminton. It was great. Apparently I can play, but like any sport, I need tons of practice. So there's a bright future for me in badminton. We've just spent the whole day with Indonesian ambassador. We've learned that he's not just a diplomat, but he's a very genuine person with a true love of Moscow. He's traveled all around Russia and he's done much to promote international friendship. This is the program Capital Ideas Life. I'm Mike Gibson. See you next time.